Hello and welcome to the Performance Physique podcast. My name is Arj and I am your head coach. This podcast is all about helping you with your running, your nutrition and your training. We take the jargon out of sports science to help you realise your goals faster than ever before. Let's get started.
And we actually started this last year. It was so successful, I wanted to continue it this year, in the fact that it's only under 3 weeks to go until the London Marathon. Arj Kaur-Grewal last year joined me every week with top tips, and I thought it would be great to do the same again, because I have to be really honest with you, I don't know a lot when it comes to health and fitness. I'm on a learning journey. But I tell you, he's the founder of Performance Physique. He is training the top athletes, some of which are taking part in London Marathon. So why not get that top advice for you, hey? Great to have you back on the show, Arj. How are you today?
Hi, Shay. Thanks very much for having me. I am doing very well, thank you.
3 weeks to go. You, as I mentioned earlier on, you do a lot of training and coaching with an array of athletes. You're working with a number of athletes who are running the London Marathon. So first, I wanted to start by asking you, how are they feeling? Do they get nervous like us, the average Joe?
Yeah, we all get nervous, and I think we talked about it last week, didn't we? The anticipation of a major event is a fantastic thing. It's part of the process. And if you aren't getting some of those nerves, then I really question how much it means to you. So nerves are a good thing. Nerves give you the fuel. But
listen, we did talk about this, but I'm glad to hear you say live on Radio London that, yes, even the most esteemed, well-trained athletes get nervous too.
Yeah, totally. It's all part of sports psychology, really, to see an athlete go through those moments and demonstrate real control whilst underneath, we talk about ducks, their feet paddling underneath the water. It's like that.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. 3 weeks to go then, Arj. I know you've got an array of top tips for our listeners. There will be many tuned into Radio London who are looking at the time, 3:41. They're thinking about the evening routine because they will be in a routine now, won't they, into the lead up to the London Marathon?
Yeah, I really hope so. I think when it comes to this point, 3 weeks to go, you're getting now very close to the point where there are still things you can be practicing and implementing to make sure things go right on the day. But it really is starting to get close to the point at which, okay, you can't get that much fitter now. Now it's really about being as prepared as possible. So you mentioned it there with your evening routine, the things that you can do building up to race day, which is going to be on a Sunday. If you haven't seen the London Marathon, it's always on a Sunday morning. So thinking about what you will be doing realistically on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we mentioned about practicing nutrition. This is something we should be doing right the way through. So every single day, practicing our race day and our training nutrition, that's the stuff before we run. And that's also the stuff that we take on during the run. We can practice all of that right now, not just once, but as often as possible.
Right. So this becomes like second nature, really, doesn't it then? But what is training your gut? We hear a lot nowadays about gut health and it being the second brain in your body. Some would say it's the first brain in your body. But what does that look like in context of training your gut 3 weeks to go with London Marathon?
Really good question. So
Thank you.
We still don't know an awful lot about the gut. We are still learning on this journey, and it's really important that we don't overemphasize the amount we know. But we do know that the gut can be treated like a muscle. So we train our body physically to run the marathon. We can train our gut to physically take on board more carbohydrate to perform better under pressure during the marathon itself. So in ideal circumstances, you'll spend 6 weeks of consuming some carbohydrate whilst you run. That's glucose. Those are those energy gels to improve how you tolerate it. 21 days until we race or so. It's still plenty enough time. So we can still do some of that training your gut. And that means every 35 minutes or so that you're taking on some carbohydrate in an energy gel, in a chew, in an isotonic drink, whatever your favorite method is whilst you run. So every 35 minutes. And it's really about seeing, okay, how much can I take on board, which doesn't lead me to feeling nauseous or even worse, needing to stop to go to the toilet.
Yes.
But allows me to run faster and better in a whole event. And as we reach the final week, we should really be getting to the point where, okay, I know I'm going to take on 8 gels, 9 gels, 12 gels during my whole marathon.
So I'm sat here now in the studio. Normally I would have had a cup of tea, but guess what? I've got a mug of hot water. I'm trying to stay hydrated. I'm taking your advice like you talked about last week. But I know, as you've mentioned before, hydration is so important. What should you be thinking about right now in terms of hydration?
Yes, so there are loads and loads of hydration stops during the marathon. It's really good for you to note a couple on your hand on race day. So take a look at the course map and pick out some which are going to be the ones that you think are easy for you to find. Look at the landmarks, etc. You want to make sure that in the week leading up, and I'll give you a reminder for this in the final week, don't worry.
Okay, good.
But in the week leading up to it, we're going to take on some electrolytes every day in your water. That's going to ensure that we're as hydrated as possible. So it's not just about race day, it's that final week. On the morning of your race, you're going to ensure that you're having your water first thing in the morning and maybe a coffee if that's what you like to do. And then 2 hours pre-race, you're going to be sipping away at an isotonic drink. That's one of those energy drinks. That's really, really important. And then from that point onwards, that's start of the race, it's about maximizing opportunities to drink. So 150 to 250 milliliters is a good kind of average starting point. And that means every 35 minutes when you're having your gel, you're looking for one of those water stations and you're going to take a few sips of that water that's available.
Okay. There's a lot of food for thought for our listeners. And what I want to say, if you're tuned in and you're taking notes, don't worry, you can listen back to this. And honestly, you are giving us all the gold nuggets of knowledge when it comes to leading up to the marathon. But there is one question I have for you, and I'm not trying to jinx anyone when I say this. It will be every runner's worst nightmare. What should you be doing with 3 weeks left to go to London Marathon if you've had some small niggles, some small injuries, something that is becoming maybe painful?
Yeah. So at this point, you do have some breathing room. So 7 days is what can really settle an injury. You need to address it really quite quickly now.
Okay.
So don't go down the mentality of, I'll just run through it. Try to find out exactly what is that issue. And in most people's circumstances, that means they need to speak to a physiotherapist in an ideal circumstance. You can do all the Googling you want, but sometimes that's the worst thing you can do. Mm-hmm. But understanding what your injury is, and very often an injury will require strength. So, for example, if your calf is hurt, you don't want to stretch that calf anymore. It's like an elastic band with some tears in it. You want to actually strengthen it. So doing some calf raises, doing what we call an isometric calf hold. Mm-hmm. These things really, really do repair a piece of tissue, muscular tissue, and therefore you can get on it immediately. And within 3 weeks, you'll be back sometimes in a equal position to what you were a few weeks ago before the injury occurred. So you need to make sure you address it really quickly and also increase your protein intake. Your muscle requires that protein to fuel and repair. So if you have a tear in it, you need more protein. Do that.
These are really important points you're making, which are going to help. It all adds up and it helps. But I've got a question for you. In context, earlier on, I was talking about nowadays the popularity of people taking collagen supplements, just to kind of perhaps help with aging. But actually, what about supplements in the context of only 3 weeks to go with the London Marathon? Of course, the first thing I would say, you should always speak and seek medical advice. But should you be considering supplements if you haven't before? What's the point of reference here now?
Yeah, that's so on point at the moment with the collagen. I did see it in the news for the skin aspect. Yeah. It's also really taking off within injury rehabilitation.
Okay.
There is no evidence at the moment that it's any more effective than normal whey protein. So if you have an injury, stick with the whey protein for now until we learn more. But the use of supplements has its place. It is to supplement the diet. And as you said, it really should come following some qualified advice. That's the best way of putting it. Now, when it comes to things like energy gels, that is just pure sugar. That's glucose.
Right.
That is a supplement, but it's the same as really having an awful lot of Haribo. So that would be absolutely fine for you to be using. At this point, though, if you were to start using something called creatine, which is again a natural substance, which a lot of endurance and a lot of power athletes use, it's probably a little bit too late in the day to try something brand new.
Okay.
Use it for your next one, perhaps.
Okay, it's some vitally important information that you've given this afternoon. It's always a pleasure having you here, Arj. You're joining us next week live, aren't you, on the show again?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. People can go to performancephysique.co.uk for more details. Arj, thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Thank you very much,
all
Shay.
of your great, just totally valuable tips here for the London Marathon. Founder of Performance Physique, Arj Torichelvam there.
Thank you very much for listening to the Performance Physique podcast. Don't forget, you can find us on Instagram. It's at performance_physique. You can find us on Facebook, Performance Physique, or if you just head to performancephysique.co.uk, and we'll do our very best to help you. It will mean the world to me, though, if you can share this podcast with one friend this week. Right, for now, take care.